Hello everyone, spongestur here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different and interesting. Today we're going to be doing a discussion on the Cartoon Network miniseries from 2014, Over the Garden Wall. The reason why we're doing this is because, not just because it is currently November, the season that this show premiered, and of course is the appropriate month to watch this miniseries. We're doing this because it is the 10-year anniversary of this miniseries. It premiered on November 3rd and ran on till November 7th, Monday through Friday. 2 episodes a day. Right now I am recording this on the day that the show turned 10 years old. And I have a few things to say about what my experience was when I saw Over the Garden Wall being advertised and being aired on Cartoon Network for the first time, because I was there when it was happening and when it was first getting announced. So in 2014, I want to emphasize that I was a dumb kid in 2014, and I watched this miniseries a little bit in. I watched like 4 or 5 episodes. I don't remember exactly what episode I stopped watching the miniseries, because I did not finished the whole miniseries back in 2014 because, again, I was a dumb kid. I just was not interested in a show that was this, like, fantasy-based and also not really heavy on comedy. So you're probably wondering, like, why I was even interested in checking the show out in the first place. Well, the reason why I was checking it out because Cartoon Network was advertising this late at 8:30, 7:30 Central. They were saying that this show is going to premiere at 8:30, 7:30 Central, Monday through Friday. And I was like, that's interesting, because normally this was at the time when every major Cartoon Network show was airing new episodes every Thursday at an earlier time. So for this show to be airing at 8:30, 7:30 Central, which is normally when Adult Swim is airing, that was different. It was interesting that they did that just for Over the Garden Wall, and then they shortly went back to the 8/7 Central sign off. So that was kind of why I was interested in watching it, because I was intrigued by how they were marketing this as like, oh, we're pushing our sign off back an hour just for this one show that's airing Monday through Friday for some reason, not every Thursday. That's supposed to be a 10-episode miniseries. Like, I wonder why they're doing this. This is interesting. So I guess I kind of have to watch it, to see what's all the hubbub about. And then, of course, I watched, like, the first episode. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I like this. Then the second episode, I was still interested. Third episode, I was still interested. Then I think, like, it was around episode 4 or 5 that I started losing interest, and then I just stopped watching it. And I just didn't get through the whole series. I wonder how many kids have the same experience where they were like, oh, I'm gonna watch this because it's interesting, and then they just stop watching after episode 5. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one there. Look, at that age, I was more interested in shows like Regular Show and Gumball. I was not interested in a show like Over the Garden Wall. I wasn't watching Adventure Time or Steven Universe at the time either. Like, I just was not interested in the more, like, serious, story-driven type of content from Cartoon Network. I was more interested in, like, the comedy, haha, we're gonna blow up this random guy and kill people type of humor, that was in shows like Regular Show and Gumball. And then it's like 10 years later, the only thing I really remembered about what I've watched from Over the Garden Wall was just remembering a song about molasses in, like, the 3rd episode. That was literally the only thing I remembered about this miniseries, except for of course, the main plot. Literally the only thing I could ever recall about it. Up until now, where I decided to watch it for the first time in 10 years, or finish it for the first time ever, actually. This is the first time I'm ever finishing a show that's a miniseries that's very popular. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard or seen it before. Like, this show is probably up there with Adventure Time and Steven Universe in terms of, like, shows that every animation fan has seen, despite not really being a very popular time for the network. Well, I mean, I guess, like, in 2014, they were still putting out, classic shows like Clarence and Uncle Grandpa, but they weren't really, like, that well beloved in the same way that Adventure Time was. Like, they were shows that some people just looked at as just dumb and not really as interesting as the other shows for some stupid reason, because they were more focused on comedy. So with Over the Garden Wall, they were kind of getting back. I don't really know if Over the Garden Wall was critically acclaimed at the moment. I don't know if it was like one of those things where, like, over time it became a classic Cartoon Network miniseries, or if it was an off the bat hit. But I don't know. Over the time, its popularity has gotten pretty crazy for a miniseries that was designed to be short and 10 episodes long. It is interesting. Like, I don't know if any, like, animated thing has something like that, where, like, it's a 10 episode miniseries that is as popular as Over the Garden Wall. It's like as popular as the normal shows that air on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. It's weird. And of course, I should probably also mention that the only other thing that I've known about Over the Garden Wall, or have seen about Over the Garden Wall since the 10 years I've gone without watching this miniseries, was the Spilling the Milk video where they binge Over the Garden Wall. But of course, when you watch a Spilling the Milk video, you're not watching one of their videos to actually watch what they're watching, You're just focused on the commentary, or at least I am. There are other people that would disagree for some weird reason, because apparently people watch Spilling the Milk for what they're watching instead of what their commentary is. I don't know how that's possible, by the way, because they talk over everything, but whatever, that's besides the point. The point is that I do have a little bit of knowledge about some of the things going on in this show, but not a lot. So nothing was really too spoiled for me. I just know that there's some bits and pieces in the later episodes that get, like, recontextualized, and yeah, that's about it. So except for the Spilling the Milk thing, I am going into this completely blind. I have no knowledge about any of these. I have no knowledge about what I have noticed 10 years ago when I watched this miniseries for the first time. So, what do I think about this? What are my thoughts? Well, I can't believe I have to say this, because I'm sure you probably already know this by now, but Over the Garden Wall is kind of good. What a shock. So for those of you who don't know about Over the Garden Wall, which has to be, like, very few of you, like, let's be honest, like, not if you're watching this video, chances are you probably already know the show. But for those of you who don't, oh my god, my phone. Over the Garden Wall is about these two boys. One of them is named Greg, the other one is named Wirt. They get lost in the woods, and the whole miniseries is about them trying to find their way back home. And the beast is after them, I guess. So they spend the whole miniseries trying to avoid the beast. There's a guy holding a lantern the entire miniseries that warns them about the beast. He warns them in episode 1. So they spend the whole miniseries looking out for that while trying to find their way home. And they find some crazy, interesting shenanigans along the way. During their journey, they also find a bluebird named Beatrice. Her story is basically she was turned into a bird. Her whole family was turned into bluebirds because of a curse, and she's trying to find a lady named Adelaide to turn her back into a human being. Now, one thing that should be emphasized about this show is that again, it's not very comedy based, even though, again, like, it is like it does have jokes. It does have a decent amount of jokes and episodes in certain episodes, but, like, for the most part, like, it's not really like a laugh out loud comedy, at least in my opinion, of course. Of course, like, comedy is subjective. Of course, like, you can laugh at a lot of these jokes and think they're really, really funny. But for me, I feel like I'm more interested in the story itself more than the jokes. So of course I'm not gonna do what I do normally in a review where I just like list off a big long list of jokes that I thought were funny in this miniseries, because again, I mean, that would be very long. Like, this is 10 episodes, not just one episode, so that would be a pretty lengthy list. But it's also just because, like, I don't think the comedy is what makes this miniseries so strong and interesting. I think it's more about the story. And I think it's more worth noting that the characters are what makes this so strong. The characters are just very likable and interesting to follow throughout this entire miniseries. So to start off with Wirt. So Wirt's character is basically that he's just always looking out and always paranoid and always just trying to figure out a way to get home. He's always the one that's trying to be the mature older brother, but he's also very insecure and very awkward at times, especially when he talks to Beatrice. And you see a lot of that in episode 9, when he's talking to his crush. And he's trying very hard to explain, all of his feelings and trying to get this situation to happen. And it's nice because he contrasts very well with his brother, which is Greg. Greg is the character that's very eccentric. He has a very big lack of focus. He's always getting distracted by the next thing, and he's always very optimistic. He's the optimistic one. And you want to know something that's funny? I literally just watched Good Burger 2 the other day. Side note, if you haven't watched Good Burger 2, here's some little advice for those of you who haven't watched Good Burger 2. Don't watch Good Burger 2. It's really bad. Don't watch it. It's a waste of your time. When I rewatched Over the Garden Wall, I thought of those characters in Good Burger when watching this, because they are kind of the same character traits. I think Ed fits very well with Greg, and Dexter fits very well with Wirt. But the thing is, Over the Garden Wall does these characters a lot better than Good Burger does these characters, because Ed's character in Good Burger is just, he's really stupid. He's just unbelievably stupid. Like, stupid to the point where it's like, how are you able to survive? How are you able to breathe oxygen? How are you still alive in your 30s or 20s or whatever? But with Greg, he always has a good heart. I guess Ed always has a good heart and Good Burger, but like with Greg, he's a kid. Like, he has the excuse of like, oh, he's just young. He's gonna be a little weird and dumb and not really know what he's doing. But with Ed and Good Burger, whenever I watch him, I'm just like, you need help. Someone needs to tutor you, because there's no way that you're this old. You're a grown man and you're just not capable of having basic comprehension. So yeah, I know that's a very strange reference to pull out here, but it just, look, when you watch something recently and then watch another thing right after that, it's very easy for you to connect the two. And it just so happens that Good Burger is just Over the Garden Wall, but done worse, at least when it comes to like the characters. I know, of course, again, like two completely different entities, but the character traits are very similar. So the Over the Garden Wall characters bring a lot of charm. I think they're like a big reason as to why this miniseries is very easy to follow. Like, even in the first episode, because me, like, I am not very engaged when it comes to like serious stuff. So, at the beginning of the first episode, I'm just like, this is just a show. I'm not very too interested in this. There's not a lot of comedy. But the more I get to understand and know these characters, the more I'm like, you know what? I am kind of interested to see where this is going. I do want these characters to do well. That is a good thing. That is a very good thing, that you got me to care about a show that isn't that focused on comedy, but more so on the story, and you actually have me interested. You actually have me hooked. That is a good thing. Next thing I want to bring up is just how dark this miniseries is. Like, for a Cartoon Network show, like, this is probably like in the top 3 most dark pieces of media that this network has produced. Like, I don't know, to give you some examples, in episode 2, they are very close to digging their own graves when they discover, like, other skeletons. they are very close to realizing that they are going to die. Like, the stakes are very high. They're so close to death. And it's very similar to episode 6, where Adelaide turns out to be a crazy lady that is going to kill these two innocent boys and stuff their heads with wool to be their puppets and make them do whatever she wants them to do. It is a very dark thing to put in a children's show. I'm not trying to say like, oh, they shouldn't do that, they should be more careful because the kids are watching. I'm not like that. Of course, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm very surprised by the fact that this show is so dark. I mean, of course, like, it's over the garden wall. It is supposed to be like a Halloween fall type of show, but it's still like, it still catches me off guard that this show does get away with a lot. And also in episode 7, that demon in episode 7 is just kind of terrifying. It did take me aback a bit, just the effects they have on the demon's voice. It's kind of haunting in a good way. I love that this miniseries has an eerie vibe. It fits Halloween very perfectly, and the fact that this miniseries came out right after Halloween is just great. And I do genuinely miss when Cartoon Network was able to get this dark. You see so many of these Cartoon Network pitch shows get sent to Adult Swim so quickly because they're like, Cartoon Network, we can't really put this on the network because, we don't want to upset the little kiddies out there, so we're gonna put this on Adult Swim so we can get away with a lot more. But, like, Cartoon Network, you were successful with all those shows like Regular Show, Adventure Time, and Steven Universe, and all of those shows that were able to get away with more darker implications and more dark themes. Like, those shows were fine. I guess it's because, like, some of those episodes got banned in other countries, but whatever, screw them. Who cares about some dumb old country? Like, this is America. We were able to get away with whatever. It's fine. I don't understand why they just don't go more dark with this network anymore. Like, it's just sad. Like, I don't know. They should maybe go back and do that. I mean, they are trying to revive Regular Show, so maybe they are gonna do that eventually. Maybe this will learn. Maybe they will learn at some point that maybe going darker and going back to their roots is a good thing. I also want to mention how the show just gives major Adventure Time vibes. Like, the show really screams like, oh, this person definitely worked on Adventure Time at some point. And of course, it turned out to be so. The creator of Over the Garden Wall is in fact Patrick McHale, which was a writer, I think, on Adventure Time at some point. You really feel that vibe during episode 7 of The Demon, or episode 7 where the demon just gives huge like Lich vibes. Like, that definitely feels like the Lich, just how it's animated. I don't know, this doesn't really have much to do with anything else that I have to say, but it's just something worth mentioning. And the final 3 episodes of this miniseries is a pretty great run. It's a legendary run because it does just make everything else that happens in the miniseries worth it. Like, I'm not saying that every episode is a bad episode or that's completely pointless, because, not every episode is at least fine. I mean, every episode does kind of serve a purpose, but there are some episodes that you could have cut out if you really had to cut out an episode. Like, if Cartoon Network put a gun to your head and was like, you have to remove an episode or else you'll never see your family again. Like, of course, like, you could remove like episode 7 or episode 4 maybe. But those last 3 episodes really makes it feel like everything ties into each other very well and very nicely done. Like, episode 8 starts off on a very dreary and negative note where like War is just fed up and has just given up on the search back to his home. And he's just lying on a tree, like next to a tree, and it's just so sad and mopey. And while Greg is still very optimistic as per usual, it's just like, I'm gonna solve the problem. I'm gonna fix everything. And then the problem was eventually gonna be solved by Greg working with the Beast, and things get very suspenseful. Like, Greg ends up bumping his head trying to rescue his brother, and then he falls to a pond, and then episode 9, it then goes back to before the beginning of the miniseries takes place, where it reveals that Greg and Wart's outfits throughout the entire miniseries were actually Halloween costumes. They weren't just like dressing up because it was appropriate to the time period. No, they had a purpose. And then that episode very nicely explains how they ended up getting into the position that they were at the beginning of this miniseries and how they got lost. They literally go over the garden wall. I felt very smart getting that on my first watch. And then episode 10, the final episode, wraps everything up very nicely. They end up escaping the beast, and the person that's holding the lantern the whole time, he extinguishes and puts out the beast, and then everything is going back to normal. Everything wraps up very nicely and has a very happy ending. And it's very nice, very amazing that this show rewards you very well for watching it a second time, because there are certain things that you wouldn't pick up on your first watch that during your second watch you'll be like, oh, that's that thing. Like in the first episode, at the very beginning, they're playing a montage of all of the things that they later do in the miniseries, all of the stories that they hit in every episode, or almost every episode. And there's also episode 6 where Beatrice is very down and just not very happy about the situation, and you're probably wondering throughout the entire episode, like, why is Beatrice like this way? And then later on in the episode, it reveals that she was using Greg and Wirt to bring her back to a normal human being by turning them into the wool thing. It's nice that there are these details that you don't notice on your first watch that you do pick up on your second watch. And it does make watching this every Halloween seem very realistic. Like, I do see people being like, yeah, this is a Halloween classic. I do watch this every Halloween, because there are these little gems that you just start noticing every single time you watch it. And of course, the characters are very lovable and fun. And, they are addicting to watch. It is just a great, well-told story. It's a great miniseries. Like, it is probably like one of the most interesting things that I've seen so far in animation. Even though, like, of course, that's not really saying much. I do not watch a lot of animation. I am a disgrace to every animation fan. But, from what I've seen, this is probably up there, like, it is very interesting and it is very one of a kind. I do wish that Cartoon Network did more things like this. I do think a year after Over the Garden Wall, they did another miniseries called Long Live the Royals. It was created by someone that was a writer on Regular Show, and I don't see anyone talking about that show. I believe the reason why is because I assume it was more comedy focused. I don't think it was trying to tell like a very interesting, well detailed story like Over the Garden Wall. I think it was just like a straight up comedy. It lasted 4 episodes, and I think that's why people don't really talk about that one. But I do think they should try more stuff like Over the Garden Wall. Not exactly a miniseries, but just more experimentation like this, because I do feel like experimentation sometimes, Cartoon Network does do very well with that. Cartoon Network can do experimentation very well. I feel like Over the Garden Wall is a great example of that. It is an interesting watch, and if you haven't watched this miniseries before, I will say, like, you should watch it. You should watch it. Like, I feel like there are so many people that in the animation community that have seen this before, and I feel like you are kind of missing out. Like, I do feel like this is interesting. Like, it is on Hulu right now, so go watch it. It is fun. It is a fun story, and maybe you'll be even more ecstatic about it as I am. Yeah, I do feel like this is something that I can see myself watching, not really every Halloween, but maybe every once in a while on Halloween I will try and watch this, because it does fit that vibe very well. It is a great miniseries for that. But yeah, that was my discussion on Over the Garden Wall. I apologize if I missed like a very important detail about this that a lot of people have talked about in like the 50 billion video essays that people have made about this show already. I don't know. I haven't watched any one of those. I'm just making this video based on my own dumb inferring. I am not very smart. So if I got something majorly wrong about this miniseries, or if I missed a very important detail, then yeah. That's why. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm a spongestur, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.